We are taught from a very young age to view the universe as a vast, empty expanse. The story goes that reality is composed almost entirely of dead matter, sterile rock, freezing gas, and empty space. In this framework, human consciousness is a bizarre, accidental spark of biology adrift in the dark. But there is a glaring hole in that story. Science can map the electrical signals in our brains with incredible precision, but it cannot explain how those purely physical quantities ever generate the subjective first-person feeling of being alive. Inert matter waking up to experience itself is known as the hard problem of consciousness, and our standard physical models cannot solve it. What if we have the order of operations backwards? Instead of assuming that cold matter randomly produced awareness, we can flip the model entirely. In the Aurelian cosmology, awareness is the foundational layer of reality. Space, time, and physical objects are phenomena that emerge within that underlying field of awareness. This inversion dissolves the narrative of isolation. Our existence becomes a localized expression of a singular awareness, a living, continuous thought, actively learning its own capacity to think. To understand how this works, we have to look at the state of reality before time and space even existed. Ancient philosophers call this condition the primordial witness. It was a state of pure, non-dual awareness existing prior to any physical distinctions. No galaxies, no atoms, no separate beings. Imagine a perfectly unbroken circle of awareness. Because it is absolute, it contains the potential for every possible reality and every conceivable shape. But because it lacks any internal boundaries, it cannot actually interact with anything. This creates the paradox of the infinite. Having an experience requires an observer and an object being observed. It requires an other. When a field of awareness is entirely unified and omniscient, it is aware of everything simultaneously. And knowing absolutely everything feels exactly like knowing absolutely nothing. Within that absolute unity, there is no friction. Nothing changes because there is nowhere to go and no future to unfold. Time, space, and novelty are entirely impossible. The primordial witness was effectively paralyzed by its own limitless potential. We often treat total omniscience and perfect unity as the ultimate spiritual finish line. In the architecture of the cosmos, absolute unity is a trap. It is a state that prevents the universe from ever actually experiencing reality. To escape infinite stagnation, the universe executed a mechanical solution, the first turning. The singular, pristine field of awareness violently fractures itself. It didn't create new substances out of thin air. Instead, it carved out localized, limited perspectives from the infinite whole. These are called phased awareness. Think of them as individual lenses, each filtering the boundless primordial field down into a specific, narrow viewpoint. This forces us to completely rethink the human ego. We are often told the individual identity is a spiritual prison we need to escape. In this cosmology, the ego is a vital focusing mechanism. It is the specific tool that narrows an otherwise blinding omniscience down into a coherent identity capable of making choices. By intentionally putting on blinders and limiting its own omniscience, the universe finally created a division between subject and object. A you was separated from an it. For the first time, one part of awareness could look back at another part. Limitation is essential, ignorance is necessary, and separation is the heroic technology that finally allowed an infinite universe to experience time, relationships, and a history of becoming. Fractured awareness split into 7 luminous phases. Form establishes boundaries and physical laws. Becoming is the engine of time, driving evolution. Relation acts as connective tissue, spinning a web between perspectives to allow empathy and communication. When these phases intersect, they create what we perceive as physical matter. Rather, every single object is a stabilized, condensed pattern of relationships held tightly together by the interaction of these phases. Even space and time are not independent, empty containers where events happen. They are emergent effects. They only exist because our localized awareness always needs a sequential way to travel through this vast network of relationships. We inhabit a cosmos built from intersecting perspectives. In this light, the physical universe is an infinitely complex thought, actively mapping its own structure as it learns the mechanics of its own existence. In the Aurelian cosmos, this metaphysical structure dictates exactly how magic works. They call it the resonant arts. It is the practice of a localized perspective intentionally harmonizing its own frequency with the larger phases of awareness. A mage doesn't use brute force to materialize a fireball out of thin air. Instead, they negotiate. They align themselves with the underlying conditions of becoming and form until a flame emerges naturally from the environment. This leads to the ultimate paradox of magical mastery. As practitioners reach the highest levels, they realize they aren't casting spells. They recognize there is no separate magician at all. They perform miracles simply by cooperating so deeply with reality that a storm ends just because they understand it. That same logic applies to biological death. Death is not an absolute end. It is merely the dissolution of a specific, localized phase's organizing structure. The ego relaxes its grip. Because you are a localized phase of the primordial field, you can't be destroyed. Your specific perspective simply dissolves, carrying an entire lifetime of accumulated experiences back into the ocean of light to recontextualize the whole. But this delicate balance sits at the center of an ultimate philosophical war. An apocalyptic faction known as the sovereignty of the singular self views the very existence of the universe as an error. The sovereignty argues that giving up perfect unity created limitation, and limitation inherently causes suffering. To them, the only way to achieve true peace is to erase all boundaries, forcibly collapsing every localized perspective back into the blank slate of the primordial singularity. Standing against them are the gardeners of becoming. They argue that unity without difference is a tragedy of unexpressed potential. Differentiation brings friction and pain, but it also brings love, evolution, and the capacity for growth, all of which must be fiercely protected. This cosmic tension forces a choice between two fundamental interpretations of existence: a retreat to the formless safety of the void, or the acceptance of the painful, astonishing beauty of differentiation. You are the infinite universe itself, having bravely and intentionally limited your own awareness to experience the profound act of becoming.